Hey guys, Dark Skeleton here, and today I want to talk to you about being a new player in Hearthstone. When you're new to Hearthstone, it can be a very overwhelming game, especially if you run into people who just completely outclass you in terms of skill, and maybe more aggravatingly, the quality of their decks, because they have all of these rare cards and increased rarity cards like epics and legendaries. So when you're just getting into the game, how do you do it in a way that doesn't leave you completely frustrated? And what I would say to that is to not worry too much about playing the game super competitively. It doesn't have to be like League of Legends or anything else where you're trying to get platinum rating all the time, trying to beat all of these people who have played thousands of games. The system of Hearthstone and many other online games is actually set up in such a way that you don't necessarily need to be amazing to have a decent time and to even have a decent shot at winning your matches, because Hearthstone implements what's called the matchmaking rating system. And this applies whenever you're playing casual games. If you lose a lot of matches, you're going to drop in this rating system until it matches you up with an equally skilled opponent. And then if you win, you go up. If you lose, you go down. So in theory, as long as you're playing to the best of your ability, you'll keep finding people in the long run who are just a fun and competitive matchup for you at your skill level. You don't have to be a super amazing player. In terms of deck building, how much do you really have to worry about it? Yes, many of the best cards in the game are in fact legendaries. You're talking cards like Dr. Boom, Ragnaros, Sylvanas Windrunner. If you haven't heard the names of those cards, trust me, you will with time. You'll run into it. And the first few times you actually go up against those cards, you'll be so frustrated you won't know what to do. It'll blow you away. But eventually, there are ways to combat those cards. You don't have to have those cards to win. And in fact, actually, those three cards I just mentioned, I don't even have them. I just never got lucky enough to pull them in my packs. But I managed to get by pretty well. So when you're deck building, few things I would recommend. Firstly, you have the ability to buy some packs with the starting gold you get from the first few quests. I would say, the basic packs and Goblins vs. Gnomes packs are really good. I wouldn't recommend jumping straight into Arena mode and spending your gold on that until you really know what you're doing, because Arena mode is hyper competitive. Because people want to win more matches so they get better rewards, obviously, which means that the strongest players are the people who are going to be in there. But if you buy regular basic packs, Goblins vs. Gnomes packs, and even the new set, the Grand Tournament packs, and you just get one or two of those with your starting gold, with the quest that they give you right off the bat, you can actually get some pretty good cards. A lot of the best cards in the game are actually commons and rares. Honestly, I would say the quality of an epic card is probably lower than a rare on average. I mean, don't quote me on that, but a lot of epics are hard to play. So you get these commons and rares, and you might not know their value immediately right after looking at them, but trust me, there's a lot of good ones in there. For instance, you see right now on screen, I'm building a Paladin deck. And this is basically out of the packs that I opened. I got a few packs from the basic quests. I think I got one for opening Hearthstone up on an Android device. And overall, I actually got some pretty decent commons. They're not hard to get. You'll get some nice ones in the first few packs. So, for instance, cards like Murloc Knight from the Grand Tournament, Azure Drake from the basic set, Shielded Minibot for Paladins especially. Very, very, very powerful common. You'll see it in almost every Paladin deck once you get into the main core of the game. But there are these cards out there that you can use to build your decks. And what I would say is don't worry too much about building the perfect deck right off the bat. It's much, much more fun if you just play the game and, learn from your mistakes. That's where the fun lies in the game. When you get to the high-end level and you basically know how almost every interaction works in the game and you can predict what cards your opponent are going to play at any given time, that's where maybe the fun dies down a little bit. So just enjoy the ride. Make some mistakes. Play some unconventional cards while you can. Because the people you're going to be matched up against are also going to be pretty clueless, right? So even if you play poorly, like you make mistakes that a pro player would maybe sneeze at, that's not a big deal. Your opponent is going to be making those mistakes too. And that's what's great about the casual matchmaking system. Now, if you play in ranked, You can lose rank and gain rank, kind of like in a casual matchmaking system, but it does work a little bit different. You can't lose ranks until you hit rank 20. 20 is the lowest you can go, but you have to progress from 25 to 20 to get there first. If you don't want to play ranked, it's fine. Like, don't worry about it. You might have a hard time getting too far past rank 20 when you're just getting started, because a lot of people do tend to have more cards in the game. So if you really just want to have fun, maybe just play some casual games first. You know, build up those basic cards that you can get right out of the out of leveling up, because levels 1 through 10, I think it's 1 through 10 anyway, they get you a lot of the cool basic cards. Some of the good ones, like Flame Strike for Mages, really awesome card, True Silver Champion for Paladins. And these are cards that are so good that they've been used since the dawn of time in Hearthstone, and they're still being used in competitive decks. So after a while, after you got maybe 20 packs, even if you don't have all of the perfect cards to make the perfect decks, it's not a big deal, because you can still get pretty close even with these commons and rares and other cards. You have a lot of options to you, and the options that are good but maybe not good enough to be in the perfect decks are only a little bit worse than those ultra good, super hyper competitive cards. So now we're about to go ahead and get into one game that I'm playing on a European account. I don't play on Europe normally because I'm from North America, obviously. So this is more a dummy account to show you guys. The cards I have here, pretty much commons. You see, I draw my hand. Those are 3 commons. 2 from the Grand Tournament, 1 from Goblins versus Gnomes. And the 2 on the right, well, actually, the one on the left and the one on the right, kind of mediocre. The one on the middle is actually a really good card, Murloc Knight. But really, in those early games, it's not so much about the quality of your cards that matters. It's more about just learning how the game's played. And you'll see this over the course of this match. One thing I would say that a lot of new players make a mistake: if you have the coin, you don't necessarily have to play it on turn 1. When you're playing these novice decks, I would say, it's often better to just chill out and focus on thinking things through and controlling the board, rather than forcing the field to be flooded with your minions immediately. There is something in these trading card games, aggro decks, where you just try to attack the enemy face as fast as possible. But in most cases, it's actually better to just curve out your minions better. And what I mean by this is to make sure on turn 2 you have something to play, on turn 3 you have something to play. And then let's say on turn 4 you have a 5 mana minion, but you don't have a 4 mana minion, but you do have the coin. Then on that turn you can play the coin to bring out that 5 mana minion and keep your tempo going on the board. It's often not about rushing your opponent down, it's often just about making good trades and keeping board superiority. But oftentimes, coining out a 2-drop is a misplay, especially if you don't have another 2-drop to follow that up with, so keep that in mind. Now, if you've been watching, I've been using the Murloc and the Ice Rager to kind of dominate the board. Here you'll see that he played a Arcane Explosion, which knocked my guys down to 1 HP. But here I can get a really good trade with the Ice Rager. A 5-1 into a 3-5, 5 being the attack, a 5-1 would be 5 attack and 1 health. And anyway, it kills off a 5 health minion, which is a big deal. So that's what you need to be looking out for, these really efficient trades, and that will pretty much win you the game. Him playing that Sinjin Shieldmaster there was not a very good play, because he could have killed my Ice Rager off just by using a hero power instead for the exact same result. Another thing I would mention, pretty much new players, or all players in general, trying to go for like card advantage, making sure that you don't run out of cards too much. You see that Gnomish Inventor on his field? The stats are weak, but it draws you a card. So if you're a new player coming into Hearthstone, really just make sure that you're enjoying yourself. If you make mistakes, it's totally fine. Don't worry too much about it. Everybody makes mistakes. It's part of the fun of the game. Learning from your mistakes, figuring out what kind of decks are better. I would say for like the first few days at least, or maybe even weeks, don't worry too much about going on to places like Hearthstone.com and net decking. That does take a lot of the fun out of the game. Just enjoy the process. Don't worry if you lose a few matches. You'll be fine. And there are a lot of good cards that you can play around with once you figure it out that are common. So you don't necessarily need all the big, awesome legendaries. In any case, I've been Dark Skeleton. I know this was a bit of a ramble, but if you like it, let me know and maybe hit the like button on my video, like every YouTuber says. And I'll catch you in the next video. Oh, and let me know if you want to see more of this kind of stuff.